start to talk about, we finished the Kohen, finished the first parsha, all the stuff in the tabernacle. Next parsha, all the Kohen's clothes and the inauguration of the Kohen, or inaugurating the Kohen. And then after all that, we're going to talk about another piece of furniture that we missed in talking about. The commentaries will discuss this. Why is it that this last item should have really been speak about the building of the tabernacle? Why does it kind of leave it all the way out to the end, following the Kohanim and so on? It's not I didn't look up the answer, I forget the answer, but that's an interesting question that's brought down. Those who are following the sequence of the way the Torah brought things down. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the tabernacle. We're going to talk about the altar, the golden altar, okay? The golden altar in the temple, in the tabernacle, that was, this is a picture of it, okay? That was not like the other altar that was outside the tent of meeting, outside the Mishkan, in the courtyard where they burnt all the animals on. This, we're going to learn today, you are not allowed to burn any animals on it. You're not allowed to pour wine libations on it, but you're only allowed to do one thing on this altar. One thing and one thing only, and that is to burn incense. That's to burn spices and ketores, a beautiful, very a complex 11 different spices that were put on the altar, and only that and nothing else was allowed to be put on top of it. Not the what's it called? No meat burning and no birds. Doesn't matter what it was. See, that's a picture what I just showed you now. If you're looking on your screen, this is a picture of the outside altar. It had a big ramp going up to it, and it was quite large in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. But the inner altar stood inside. I'm going to go back to an old picture that we have of the way the Mishkan was set up, the tabernacle. I'm just going to go back to right here we have it. You'll notice here is the courtyard, which was a huge courtyard around the that had the house, the Mishkan inside of the temple, inside of the tabernacle, and the big altar had this huge ramp going up onto the altar to burn the sacrifices. The altar we're talking about today is the one that was inside the actual house, that was inside the courtyard, not in the courtyard itself, but inside the house. You'll see a picture of it. This is a picture of the inside of the tabernacle. You'll notice that there's the curtain. Behind the curtain is the Holy of Holies. That's where the tablets were inside the ark, the cherubs. And the menorah, you'll notice, was on the outside to the left, to our left at least. The bread table was to our right. And then you'll notice the altar was stationed directly center of the room, facing directly straight ahead from the tablets, from the altar where Hashem would speak from. So it's all very specific, very interesting. And we'll go through it now together inside the Chumash. Now, I forgot. So of course, I'm waiting for people to ask in our class. So everybody wants to know why. Why would we burn? What was the point of these spices? Okay, so what was the point of that? And they say that actually this was the holiest item, perhaps. I don't know if you could say that specifically. This was the holiest item. The burning of the spices was the holiest item in the temple. Actually, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, went in only once a year into the Holy of Holies. And what did he do there? He burnt spices in the Holy of Holies. So probably the holiest service, even more than the sacrifices and so on, was the burning of the incense. So I looked up one of the rabbis, the Minchas, the Chinuch, Sefer HaChinuch, which I always bring reasons from, and he's like, this is the Kabbalist understand, this is beyond reasoning. But I brought for you here a number of reasons. First of all, these are the spices. If you want to just look at what are the spices that they would burn, interesting. They would burn, one second, sorry guys. They would burn these 11 spices. So you might notice some of them. The balm oil. I'm just going to read the ones that maybe I could even try to read. Some musk. You can see here, spikenard, cinnamon. I guess that's something that we know. And all these different spices were the concoction of what the spices were made of. So back to the reason for it. So 3 reasons. I thought I posted it here. Maybe I didn't. This is an article a friend of mine wrote actually on Chabad.org, but it does not look like I posted it here. He says Maimonides brings like a very basic reason. Of course, there has to be much more to it. Maimonides brought a very basic reason saying that there was a lot of bad smell from the meat factory. You know what I mean? Like it smelled like a butcher shop, which doesn't have the best smell, and the temple needed to smell good. And therefore, they would burn every morning and every afternoon beautiful smelling spices in order to keep such a holy place smelling as it should with a very delicious, beautiful smell. That's one reason to it. The commentaries go in and say there must be more to it. That's not, why would they burn that on the Holy of Holies? It has to be more to the spices than just trying to keep the temple smelling good. There's a very specific concoction. And if there wouldn't be a bad smell, will we not burn spices? There obviously has to be more meaning to the spices itself. So some of the other reasons given is that the animal represents our animal soul being burnt. The problem is, even when you bring your animal to the synagogue, it comes with a lot of bad hang-ups with it too. So you bring him to class, there's a lot of selfishness there, and so on. And the burning of the spices, the beautiful smelling smell, is kind of to help even when you bring your animal to work, when you bring your animal with you, even the negative things that come out of it, to elevate that too, to lift it up. It's one of the reasons he brings here from the Rebbe in the article that the idea for the Rebbe that there's the inner parts of the person and the outer parts of the person. So our thought, speech, and action, I believe he's saying, is the outer parts of the person. And this burning, when we bring a sacrifice, we're burning the thought, speech, and action of our animal. But there's always a deeper part to the Jew, an essential connection to Hashem, a certain bond, and the burning of the incense represents that inner bond, not the external bond of the person with Hashem, which we're trying to elevate to bring a sacrifice, but it's more of the internal bond, and that's why it's so special. That's why they burn on Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur represents the internal bond between the Jew and Hashem. Just our class is not about reasons, but I know everyone always asks me about the reasons to the different things. So here you go. You have the highest, holiest level of the sacrifice of everything in the temple being done, and that is the burning of the incense, the spices that's burnt in the holy temple that we have here today. Okay, we'll go on to the verses now that we explained the reason for it. We're going to go on with Hashem's help to the verses to see. I thought it was here. 1 second. Maybe I didn't have it. To today's Chumash to share with you guys where we study this inside. I'm actually behind, the day behind, so we're going to be learning Shabbos' section today, and then tomorrow we're going to move on to this week's Torah portion. So we're actually, 1 second, sorry guys, we're a day behind, but that's fine. We will catch up. This coming week, we're going to actually learn something very powerful. We're going to learn about the sin of the golden calf. So stay tuned. One of the very famous sad episodes in Jewish history is going to be in this week's parsha. So hold on, and we will get there. But first, we got to finish the last piece of furniture in the temple that we're learning about here. Okay. Vasisa mizbeach miktar titaris, and you should build another altar, which is to burn incense on that altar. Not like the outer one, which is to burn animals, and we burn some bread on. We burn some matzahs on there, and they have the wood running. No, it would be a smaller golden altar, like we'll see, not copper, but a golden altar, where you're going to burn special spices, special incense on this altar that's actually inside the tabernacle, not outside it. It should be made of atei shitim. It should be made out of pine wood, acacia wood, or pine wood. Tasa oisa, you should make it. So there should be a special altar for burning spices, burning incense, this unique concoction of recipe of spices, a smelling aromatherapy, this unique kind of smelling spices that Hashem's going to give you. We need another piece of furniture besides the menorah, besides the bread representing our parnasa, and besides the tablets representing the Torah. There's going to be another altar there that's representing the Kohanic job in the temple, and that is to burn specifically a little place to burn the spices. How big is it? Quite small. Amma orkoi v'amma rachboi. 1 amma its width and 1 amma its length. So a square amma is about 1.5 feet. So it's 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet. That's a really small table. Ravua yiyah, it should be square. V'amasayim k'masei, and its height should be 2 ammas high. So it was about 6 feet, right? What is it? 1.5 feet, 1.5. So that's 3 feet high. It was 3 feet high and 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet. Small table. It's a piece of Isai Zahav, and unlike the outer altar, which was made out of copper, this thing should be plated with gold. As Gagoi, its roof, Ves Kiraisav, and its wall sav, the whole thing, the roof of it, the sides of it, Ves Karnoisav, and the corners. It also had like the outer altar. Remember, they had on each corner there was, he calls it torets here, he calls it like horns. Like the altars had these 4 corner horns. So you should have 4 corner horns. Vasisa Leizer Zahav Saviv, and it should have a golden crown going around the top. So 2 important things I have to tell you about this verse. Number 1, I learned something I didn't know clearly. I asked other people and they didn't know either, some learned people. And this seems to be what Rashi's saying. And you study this stuff for years, and I even studied before, and we missed something. So or maybe not, maybe you guys didn't miss it, but basically the altar, the outer altar was copper plated. It actually did not have a copper roof, right? I thought when I learned the outer altar that it was fully plated with copper. We did learn that it was filled up with earth inside, but I assumed that wrongly so, it seems like, that it had a copper, fully plated copper on top, and just the inside was filled with earth. No, according to this Rashi here, according to understanding now, is it actually had a hole. It was a hole going straight through the middle. It had 4 walls that were plated with copper, but it actually left a hole underneath in the middle through the top. There was no roof. There was a thick wall maybe for the Kohanim to walk around on, but the middle center of it was filled with earth. So then whenever they would park in the tabernacle and they would stop at that altar, they'd put it down, fill it with earth, and the whole till the top, when they would burn the animal and everything on, it was filled with earth that they would burn it on top. However, what he's telling you here is this altar, the small table that they would burn the incense on, the spices on, that had a roof, a roof, and that roof was made out of pure gold with pine wood underneath it. It was a smaller table. It was made with pine wood plated by gold, and they would burn the incense twice a day, the spices on that gold plate that was on top of the pine wood. That's point number 1. Number 2, the other thing is this has a crown. If you're following me, there was 3 items. This is the 3rd item that has a crown, if I remember correctly. One was the crown around the ark, representing the crown of Torah, royalty of Torah. The next thing that had a crown we learned about was the bread, representing the royalty of kingship, that, your meal, your table, that's like royalty of kingship. I believe that's what we said. Keser Malchus. And this is Keser Kahuna, the 3rd people to have a crown. Royalty is the Kohanim. Where was the crown of the Kohanim that represented in the features in the temple? That was on this altar, which I guess was the holiest service that the Kohanim would do. It actually says, I believe that when you would burn the incense, you become very wealthy, you become very rich. So no Kohen would get to do it twice. They would always give another Kohen a chance to bring the incense because it was so unique, it was so special, it was so powerful that, and they would only give one Kohen a chance in their lifetime, I believe, to burn the incense on this inner altar. And this inner altar had a crown representing the crown of the kahuna, of the Kohanim. So we so far have 3 crowns. We have the crown of the kings represented in the table, the crown of Torah represented around the ark, which had the tablets, and now we have the crown of the Kohanim, the royalty of the Kohanim represented on this small altar that we're talking about over here. So some fascinating stuff. Now on that thing, like everything else, it had rings, and the rings would have the wood, the pine wood that would carry that they would carry this altar whenever they would walk, whenever they would travel. There should be 2 rings of gold. Tasala you should make for this golden altar, the smaller inner altar. You should place them under the crown that we just said it had a crown. On the 2 corners, on all the corners. Tasa al shnei tzidav, you should make on it both sides, the corners of each of the sides. They should be houses for the poles, the carrying poles. To carry them in them. So there were golden rings, which they inserted into the rings of poles. Now, what are the poles going to look like? Also, this is verse 5. You should make the poles out of the pine wood, acacia wood, and then you would cover the poles with gold too. Everything had to be gold plated in this altar. And cover it with gold. You should place it where in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, in this house was a place wherein it was. So I showed you the picture of it before. It was the outer altar was in the courtyard, stayed outside the Mishkan, outside the tabernacle. This was inside the tabernacle, but unlike the menorah that was towards one side and the table of bread, which was to another side, this is diametrically opposing, facing the Holy of Holies. You should put this golden altar before, outside the curtain, right? Because you have the curtain separating from the holy to the Holy of Holies. It should be outside the curtain in the holies. Asher Arna Edo is the curtain that's covering the Ark of Testimony that's inside that room. The Fnei HaKaperes, and you should make it facing the beautiful roof that sat on the Ark of Testimony with the cherubs. The cover, you should make it diametrically opposing. Asher Eidos, that's the on the cover with the cherubs that's sitting on the tablets. That I'm going to reveal myself to you there. So the very holy ark, which is God's way of passing information to us, the meeting place between us and Hashem, that special holy place should be faced. This table of burning the incense should be facing it. Victor all of Aaron and Ketairis. And what should Aaron do with this special small altar, golden altar? Aaron should burn on it the Ketairis, the spices, samim, Ketairis samim, the incense of spices. Babaker. When does he do it? Every morning, right? Remember, we learned that twice a day that you would bring a sacrifice in the morning and the afternoon. Well, guess what? This was also done twice a day. Babaker, every morning. One of the first things the Kohanim would do was go and burn the incense on this inner altar. When would he do it? When he had another job he would do. What else would he do in the morning? What else would the Kohen's job be done in the morning? And whenever he would clean out the menorah, whenever he would clean out the menorah candles, that's when he would burn the incense. Now, why would he clean out the menorah? This is very simple. You know, like on Hanukkah, we know we light our menorah, right? And maybe burns through the night. In the morning, you got to clean up. In the morning, you got to clean up the wicks because you have burnt wicks. So every single day, every single afternoon, they would light the menorah, and then it would burn all night. At the morning, you had to clean it out. So the Kohen would come in the morning, and he would clean out the burnt wicks that were there out of all the burnt that was burnt out overnight. At the same time, he would also burn the incense on the altar. So we had two jobs. They went in every morning. They would never go into the Holy of Holies. That was only once a year on Yom Kippur. But every day they would enter the Holies. And what would they do on the Holies? We know the challah, the bread. What would they do on the challah bread? They would do it once a week. That was only on Friday or Shabbos. We spoke about that. Then the challah would sit there all week. But the menorah was every day lit. It was cleaned in the morning. And also you would burn the incense every morning. And he shall make it, so when he sets the lamps in order, Yaktirenu is when he should make it go up in smoke. That's when he should burn the incense. And what else? But then the Kohen would come back a second time, also to light the menorah. He would now light the menorah in the afternoon, right? And then it would burn all night. When it came in the afternoon to light the menorah, he should then burn a second batch of the second half. It was like split in two halves, half for the morning and half for the afternoon. He again goes onto the altar and he burns the spices. Tamid should be every single day before God. For all your generations, they should burn this special incense every single day, twice a day in the temple. And nothing else is allowed to go in. Not like the outer altar, which you brought all birds and blood and everything else. Salu olav ketairas, do not burn any other incense. This is one set thing this is to be used for, nothing else. You know, you have your dining room table that's used only, let's say, once a year, whatever. So whatever you use it for, this altar should not be used for any others and any other spices. All the ketairas zara, no foreign spices. Va'ila, no burnt offerings. You want to do that? That's on the outside altar, not this one. Umincha, and when you burn the bread offerings, you know, the flour offerings. I mean, no, it doesn't go on this altar. V'nesach, and remember the libations of wine. Sometimes you pour wine, not on this altar. Leisischu olav, you should not pour the wine libations on him. However, there is once a year, which we're going to do something to this altar, which we will not do all year. Once a year. What is that? And we read this in Yom Kippur. And now this helps us understand the Yom Kippur davening. For those who stay in shul through the Musaf services, will notice that there's a whole nother part to the services. And we read all about this. What would happen? This is once a year, which you do something to this altar. Aaron our karnos. Aaron will make atonement. What does it make for atonement? So Rashi explains. There's going to be two sacrifices that he's going to burn, going to offer on Yom Kippur, two special sacrifices. One is a par, one is a bull, and the soyer and the goats. And he's going to take their bloods and he's going to sprinkle it once a year on this golden altar on the four corners. Achas Pashana, once a year on Yom Kippur. Vidam achatos hakipurim, from the sin offering, forgiveness sin offerings that he brings on Yom Kippur. Achas Pashana, once a year. Yechaper olav, it will ask forgiveness. What's the point of sprinkling that blood on the four corners of the altar? To ask forgiveness if, God forbid, anything was done wrong in the altar that's supposed to forgive the Jewish people. God forbid if we did it wrong, something wrong way, this would ask forgiveness, as we'll see soon in the verse, to forgive. This is the verse telling you to forgive if, God forbid, something wasn't pure, the vessel or the temple, the kohen, if somebody wasn't pure and therefore messed up in their services in the temple, the sprinkling would be sprinkled once a year on this altar to ask forgiveness for that. It should be for all generations. This is holy of holies, this altar. Nothing else allowed to go in it. It has to be just one for one purpose. Hula Hashem, it's holy for Hashem. Only spices are allowed to go on this thing for Hashem. I hope that was clear and understandable to everyone about one of the major services in the Mishkan was this incense. Any questions or comments on this altar and the incense that was burnt on this altar? By the way, share with you something interesting, just to make it real history. So they would take, if I remember correctly, they would make it into once a year. They'd make the concoction, the spices. Okay, once a year they'd make 368 portions. Now there's 365 days to the year. So the 3 extra was left over, and it was used for Yom Kippur because in other words, you needed 365 portions. Then you'd split each portion in half. Half of the portion would be brought in the morning, and half of the portion would be brought in the afternoon. So you had 2 portions of incense that was burnt in the morning, half in the morning, half in the afternoon. And you prepare in the beginning of the year, whenever they do it, they get for the whole year. They have a big pile enough for the whole year. They take however much they needed, the morning and in the afternoon. Now, and they would burn that. It was very unique spices. Now, talking about modern finds. So not many years ago, I mean, I think maybe it was Yom Kippur War, the 6-Day War, they found very famous, they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there was a whole treasure hunt, how they left it and they found it. And it led them to a place which they had some of the stuff, I don't know if it's backup or some of the stuff for the temple, and they found the spices of the temple, exactly the amount of 368, the portion that was supposed to be there, exactly that measurement. And they went to, I think it was Bar Ilan University, one of the, maybe mixing up, maybe another university, and they also the scientists took the spices and they found exactly these 11 spices. What is what it was made of. We're saying here the 11 spices that was made up. They went, they dissected, and they found the spices that were in there. The reason I know about this is because one of the guys who was a professor then, his name is Antelman. His son lives in Massachusetts, goes to Chabad with my father, and he showed me videos of it and so on. I actually had some of those spices that somehow I got a hold of it, and I got rid of them and gave them away to somebody else. I didn't want to have them in my possession, but it's very cool. They found these exact concoction of spices was found in not long ago. Some pretty cool stuff. So this is all just to add some more current findings that were found. Any questions or comments on the spices? If not, we'll move on to Tanya. Okay, so we'll move on to today's